What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we have the second episode in our Underdog Draft Strategy Series this summer. If you want to see all the math behind the project, I went over that 2 weeks ago. I'll link that in the description box down below. But today we're going to take a deep dive into the single most optimal strategy that the simulations have found. I've simulated well over 100,000 builds, and this is the most optimal build that the model has found. So sit back, hit the like button, and let's hop into it. So this week, the strategy is called the Extreme Robust Wide Receiver Strategy. This is my favorite build type, not only because it's super easy to remember and is the most optimal. I like the ones that are very optimal, but also because it's really easy to implement. You start off with 5 straight wide receivers. Very, very simple to remember. And it might sound tough to get 5 straight wide receiver values, but to be honest, there are so many wide receivers that go in the first 5 rounds that it's actually not too difficult to draft wide receivers without really reaching. Maybe you need to reach 1 to 2 spots by ADP, but you can honestly walk into a draft kind of expecting to do this strategy. And if you really wanted to do it and you were okay reaching a little bit, you're probably not going to have to reach that much. Now, I always suggest letting the draft come to you and implementing a strategy that fits your value in that draft the most. So I still want you guys to come into every draft with an open mind and to not just go in with a set strategy. But to be honest, this build type is so optimal and it's so easy to get players very close to their ADP that, again, I wouldn't be against planning on using this in a draft. So again, start off with 5 straight wide receivers. After that, you're obviously going to have a very, very elite core of wide receivers, but know that 5 as a total is not going to be enough in an 18-round draft. And so we're going to take a break at the position for a while, and we're going to circle back to it later in the draft. Round 6 is incredibly important. This is the round that the build turns from really solid, being a build that is very well put together and is really good team, to being one that absolutely destroys your opponents. You need to try your absolute best to hit on this year's Josh Jacobs. You are attacking a running back that could break out, turn into a 3-down back, and potentially finish top 5. We are not targeting a running back that we're pretty sure is going to be solid, pretty sure is going to finish with like mid to low end running back 2 production. If you want to hit the ceiling of this build, you have to try and hit on a league winner. And if you can do that, then you've turned this effectively into a hero RB build, which we know are very optimal, that also includes that first round wide receiver and is dominant at the wide receiver position. After round 6, you have options in the next 3 rounds. You want to leave the 9th round. So in 7, 8, and 9, these 3 rounds, you want to exit with 2 quarterbacks and a tight end, but it is completely irrelevant which order you take them in. If you want to go 2 quarterbacks, then your tight end. If you want to take tight end first, do whatever you want, whatever players you prefer, whatever value you see. It does not matter. Every single combination grades out super well, but you want 2 quarterbacks and 1 tight end. So again, start with 5 wide receivers, running back in round 6, really trying to lean towards upside, get a player that can really hit, and then 2 quarterbacks, 1 tight end in round 7, 8, and 9 in any order. As we enter the double-digit rounds, we're going to draft no more quarterbacks. This is a 2 quarterback build, 6 running backs, 2 more wide receivers, and 1 more tight end, leaving us with a 2 quarterback, 7 running back, 7 wide receiver, 2 tight end build. Now, the interesting thing with this build is that in almost every build where we're assuming wide receiver is going to fill that flex spot, and let's be honest, the name of this build is Extreme Robust Wide Receiver. Wide receiver should be filling the flex spot in most weeks. But normally, that's going to require us to draft definitely 8, but more than likely 9 or 10 wide receivers. If you are assuming that flex spot is going there and thus, maybe a little bit less draft capital or fewer players at other positions, usually you need a ton of wide receivers. But this build, because you were able to start off so strong at wide receiver, you only need to draft 7 in total, and you can still assume that the flex is being filled by wide receiver most weeks because we started off with 5 in a row. So especially if you're able to hit on that 6th round running back, we're not really weak anywhere, right? I mean, quarterback is fine because we took 2 in round 7 through 9, so you've got a really strong core there. Running back is fine because maybe we hit on that 6th rounder, but we have 7 in total, which is more than most optimal builds. And it's just like, it's enough to where you're probably going to hit on 2 solid running backs each week. And then tight end is perfectly fine because you got, maybe one of those last really good tight ends, but you've got 2 shots at tight end. You were able to get one in 7 through 9. Like, you're probably totally fine at the position. It still allows you to hit on a breakout. So as you can see, I love this build. And just like last week, I have an example team to show you. What I have on the screen now is the results from a Best Ball Mania 4 draft that I did recently. This is part of the largest tournament in fantasy football history. It is a $25 entry fee, $3 million to first place, $15 million in total prizes. And as you can see, I almost did this draft correctly. I ended up taking Stafford in the 14th round instead of a running back. That is the only deviation away from what is optimal. It left me with 3 quarterbacks, 6 running backs instead of 2 quarterbacks and 7 running backs. Looking back, I think I should have taken Tank Bigsby with that pick. He ends up going 1 pick after mine, so he was available. My thought process was Stafford was a really good pick by ADP, and I took Cooper Kupp 6th. And if I'm going to win this league, if I'm going to place highly in this tournament, I have to assume that Cooper Kupp is having a really, really good season. And if I'm having that assumption, well, Matthew Stafford is also probably having a really, really good season. And so I thought that just made Stafford a really good pick. I think this is a good reminder that you're always allowed to make slight deviations as long as the generic optimal build is there. If you want to deviate, away from the optimal build a little bit, you see things that are going to correlate really well with your roster, that is totally fine to do. I even think you could look back and maybe say that I improved the build doing that. But again, that is the one thing that deviates from what is optimal. And I think there's definitely an argument to be made for Bigsby, an argument to be made for Stafford at that pick. So I start off, for those of you listening on the podcast and don't know what my team looks like right now, I start off first 5 rounds, Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, which is insane value at pick 30, DJ Moore, who I think I took a little bit too early, probably should have gone with DeAndre Hopkins there, and then Keenan Allen in round 5. My potential league winner in this build is Joe Mixon. I think the rationale as to why is fairly self-explanatory. Like, sure, he could bust. He could still get cut from the Bengals. It's seeming very likely that he's going to be the lead back on the Bengals. They want him there. He wants to be there. It doesn't seem like he's going to get suspended, but who really knows? But basically the thought process is, well, if he's the starting running back on one of the best offenses in football, who has been highly productive in the past and is still, in a good age for running backs and is still a very good running back and doesn't get suspended, like, yeah, I mean, he could definitely come out there, finishes the running back 7, and then that's a really, really good pick of the spot and really becomes an anchor of this team. I opted to go with tight end in round 7 with Darren Waller. I wanted a tight end that was capable of finishing inside the top 3. I wanted really to hit on that league winner, and I looked at the later rounds, and I really thought there was a drop off after the Darren Waller pick. I think Darren Waller, could be the number 1 target for the Giants. We have seen him dominate, in real life and in fantasy when he's been healthy. And so if he can stay healthy, I just thought that was a pick that if I had waited a round or two, I'd have been reaching on a much, much more low-end tight end. Didn't want to do that. Opted to take him there. Rounds 8, Rounds 9, I go with Tua and Geno. Their ADPs since this draft was a few weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. Both of their ADPs have dropped. All the quarterbacks in that general range have been dropping a little bit. So this no longer would be a really, really good pick. But I think the Tua stack with Waddle really gives some upside to this offense. I would make that pick again, even with the ADPs moving back. The Geno pick, honestly, looking back, is just unfortunate. I wanted to go with Daniel Jones to pair with Darren Waller. He gets taken one pick before me. And I think, you know what happens when like you've got someone queued up, you're the next pick. You're like, yes, this is going to be awesome. I've got my Tua Waddle stack. I've got my Daniel Jones and Waller stack. Like everything's going well. The build's being implemented properly. And then he gets taken the pick before you. I think I was just too locked in to taking that quarterback there, to doing the build. His stacks were already gone, right? When you look at Geno, Lockett was obviously gone. JSN's gone. Metcalf is gone. And so I think I should have taken Dak at that spot instead of Geno, even if I have Geno rated a little bit higher. Maybe I could have paired him with Gallup, paired him with Vaughn late. I would have had options. Just looking back, like there was no one for me to pair Geno with, so I think I should have gone with a different quarterback. In the double-digit rounds, I just wanted pure upside at running back. I took Rashad Penny, who knows? I mean, genuinely, who knows what's going to happen with Penny this season, but he could be the running back one on a very, very good run-heavy offense that's going to score a lot of touchdowns, and he'll be the main touchdown scorer. Like, a lot of upside there. Khalil Herbert, I mean, he could get beat up by Roshan Johnson, but he could also just end up being better, on an offense that's going to be really good. And, like, he could have a lot of touchdowns as well. Tyjae Spears, hey, Derrick Henry is a monster, right? But he's not invincible. Something could happen to him. Spears would step up as the obvious two there. Leonard Fournette, who knows where he's going to sign, right? Or if he's even going to sign somewhere, but if he does, he's probably going to shatter his ADP. And then Jerome Ford, someone I've been talking about for the entirety of the summer, number 2 in Cleveland, makes a lot of sense there. With my 2 wide receiver picks, I took Adam Thielen and Puka. Puka was just to complete the Rams double stack, and honestly, just to make myself feel better about taking Stafford, justifying it just a little bit more. I've been taking Puka a lot later in drafts. I think he has a lot of talent and a lot of opportunity on that offense, but it was basically just saying, well, you know what? If the Cup and the Stafford picks work out, why don't I add a little bit to that? Maybe this offense is really good, does a lot through the air, and Puka really comes out like on top there as their number 2. And then Thielen, it was just a one-off pick. I was just basically like, hey, he hasn't been great the last 2 years, but he's still a really solid player. If he can separate as the wide receiver 1 for the Panthers, he's got some upside in round 13. There were no other picks I was in love with at that spot. Then finally, my second tight end, I opted to take Dalton Schultz. I honestly had the same reasoning as Thielen. It was kind of just a one-off pick. He's joining a new team. He's a very good player, and so he could definitely bust, just like Thielen could definitely bust. But at their ADPs, I think they have enough talent, enough potential opportunity to make them good one-off picks where they went. So the draft definitely could have gone better. But that's the reason that I show you guys my teams that I'm actually drafting, spending $25 to do these drafts. I'm drafting these teams to show you in these Sunday videos that, like, it's going to happen, right? It is incredibly rare that everything goes perfectly in your draft. You're getting all this ADP value. You're able to finish these builds perfectly, you know exactly what's optimal. So by showing you all of my teams in actual paid leagues, you're going to see very realistic outcomes as to what you can expect from each build type. And if you want to implement this strategy or any of the strategies we're going over, in the last few videos, every single Sunday moving forward, or if you want to take place in the largest fantasy tournament ever, then make sure you're signed up for an Underdog account today. And if you're not, I've got the best deal you're ever going to find when signing up. If you sign up using promo code FFA, they will not only match your first deposit up to $100. So if you deposit $75, they'll turn that into $150, but you'll gain access to my custom Underdog rankings. You can upload directly to Underdog, use those as your pre-draft rankings in seconds. You could draft that wherever you are. You are on a boat this summer, my rankings will show up when you open the Underdog app. You'll get access to my Underdog strategy articles where I do a deep dive into a bunch of strategies just like this one, and my Underdog drafting app where you can find strategies of your own or even use while drafting to see which positions are best for you to draft given what you've done. I really think that one of us can take down Best Ball Mania for this season, and it's honestly just really cool taking part in the largest fantasy tournament ever. So I'll be back tomorrow with likely a different structure to the Mock Draft Monday I want to test out. Tuesday, live, 6:30 Eastern, to do a Best Ball Mania 4 with all of you, answer any questions you have. And then Wednesday for another rankings video. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? How about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.